He lost track of how long he had laid crying like that. All he knew was that he eventually became exhausted enough to close his eyes and sleep. And with the sleep came more nightmares. He didn't remember much, but caught enough glimpses of them to wake up in a cold sweat. His parents dying as he sucked the life from their bodies, feeding his never-ending appetite for blood. His home burning down. Jotaro, Mr. Joestar, Polnareff, all dead. Their broken, drained bodies laying at the feet of Dio. Dio laughed and reached his hands towards Kakuin's face.
When I first met you, you were nothing. But now you are more.
He gasped and opened his eyes. He glanced up, breathing heavily from his nightmare. Through the narrow opening above, streaks of red stretched across the darkening sky. It was almost nightfall. He'd be able to move soon. He sighed and rubbed his eyes, trying to forget his dreams.
They're not real,
he told himself.
Mom and Dad are fine. You saw them. They're just fine.
Once the sun was lower, Kakuin crawled out from underneath the overhang, stretching his stiff legs. He stood up, his head rushing from the sudden movement. It took a moment for him to regain his bearings. He was standing again. He could finally start to make progress. He made his way towards the town. He had made up his mind on what he was going to do, and he didn't have a moment to lose. He had to find Jotaro. He'd do that by heading to Tokyo. If he was alive, then he'd be there. If he was dead, Kakuin would learn soon enough. Of course, it would be a very slow journey. He would have to travel by night, hiding from people, and he'd probably have to make the journey on foot, for he didn't trust himself enough to take public transportation quite yet. Not to mention, he didn't have a single yen to his name. He'd done the math. Jotaro lived in the suburbs of Tokyo. Morio was nearly 400 kilometers away. He could make the journey on foot in about 5 days. He knew it was long, and definitely not the most efficient use of his time, but he figured this was the safest bet for now.
Hang in there, Jotaro. I'll find you. If not, then I'll hunt Dio down and slaughter him.
Jotaro admired the landscapes of the Japanese countryside. Being from the city, he didn't get to see places like this very often. Of course, compared to the sights he'd seen on his 50-day trip around the world, this wasn't as impressive. But to him, this was home, so it felt more familiar. The old man was driving, tapping his hand on the steering wheel in time to the beat of a Beatles song that was playing on the radio. Other than that, the car was quiet, reflecting the solemn nature of their trip. It was his grandfather's last day in Japan. He had come with Jotaro to see his mother, Holly, and make sure she was all right. He'd been with them for about 3 weeks now, and as much as he and Jotaro's grandmother, Suzy Q, loved visiting them, they had to head back to America soon. They packed up yesterday, and now Jotaro and Joseph were heading to the Japanese countryside to pay one last visit to Kakuin's grave. To pay their final respects. Jotaro sighed. His bruises and cuts had all healed from his fight with Dio. His ribs had healed as much as they could with a splint. His arm and clavicle were still hung in a sling. The doctor said he'd have to wear them for a few more weeks. What a pain. After everything, it felt surreal to be back to normal life. But normal didn't feel right anymore. Their 50-day trek around the world had been such an ordeal he couldn't even imagine what would happen afterwards. And yet here he was, not constantly having to be on the lookout for enemy stand users, visiting his best friend's final resting place, and then he'd go with his mom to drop off the old man and his grandma at the Tokyo airport.
So, Jotaro.
The old man started talking, snapping Jotaro out of his thoughts.
What do you think you'll do?
Jotaro lowered his hat, blocking the sun from his vision.
What do you mean?
Well, what will you do when you graduate?
Beats me.
You could always come and work for me, I suppose.
No thanks. Real estate is all kinds of boring.
You shouldn't be so dismissive, you know.
Jotaro didn't respond to that. Joseph just sighed and kept driving. The old man's voice became more quiet and contemplative.
Sometimes I still can't believe that they're gone, and that it's all over.
Jotaro sighed. He didn't have to think too hard to know what Joseph was referring to.
Yeah.
He conceded, his harshness gone.
It sure does suck sometimes.
Sometimes. More like all the time. But there was no way he'd admit that to the old man or anyone else. They went in silence the rest of the way, the radio losing its signal the further out they went into the country. It came back, though, once they started getting closer to their destination. Morio, Japan. It was a quaint little suburban town out in the country. If Kakyoin hadn't been from here, Jotaro couldn't imagine he'd ever have heard about it. The land beyond it was all farmland, transmission towers dotted here and there.
I still can't believe it came from a place like this.
It just didn't seem to fit him at all. They drove into town, and the neighborhood started to become more dense. Heading deeper into the city, there started to be more traffic, people starting to emerge from work and school to go on lunch break.
Come on!
Joseph growled as they got stuck behind a particularly slow car.
Stupid Japanese traffic!
Jotaro looked out the window, ignoring his grandfather. People passed by them on the streets, going about their business. Some of them, mostly teenagers and young adults, walked and talked with friends. Others simply looked down at the ground, not speaking to anyone, focused only on where they were going.
Do they know?
He wondered if anyone in this town even knew that Kakyoin was gone, other than his family. Did they know the sacrifice that had saved the world, and by extension, this town from Dio? The car turned the corner. After a few streets, the traffic thinned, and the buildings started becoming sparse again, less detailed as they went along. Finally, they pulled up to a neatly manicured plot of land, surrounded by a black metal fence. The cemetery. They were here. Joseph pulled the car up by the gate and parked. They got out, immediately bathed in the cold winter air. Jotaro pulled his coat tighter around his sling. Joseph went to the back seat and pulled out the flowers they'd gotten. It was a small yet elegant bundle of lilies. They didn't actually know what flowers Kakyoin had liked, or if he even would have cared at all, so they just picked what they thought looked nice.
I hope he likes lilies.
Hope he doesn't give a crap.
They walked up to the gate and started passing the other graves. Jotaro glanced around, a habit he'd developed from their 50-day journey. You never knew when enemies would lurk up from behind to attack. As he was looking, he noticed the graves were a pretty even mix of their age. Some seemed ancient, while others were much newer. He wondered why there seemed to be some older ones. Were they for famous people or something, and that's why they were still here? He stopped to look at one of the older ones, while Joseph kept walking. He didn't recognize the name. He looked around it. There was a couple buried right next to it, with the surname Kira.
What a weird town. They need to get rid of some of these older graves.
Jotaro!
Joseph called to him, his voice panicked.
The grave! It's...
Jotaro felt his blood run cold. Something was wrong. He turned towards his grandfather and ran to catch up to him, as fast as he could with his hurt arm. He grunted from pain as it was jostled, but he kept going.
What is it, old man?
He said as he came up behind Joseph.
The grave! Look at it!
Jotaro looked to the ground, and his eyes widened in shock from what he saw. A large hole, about a meter wide, had opened beneath Kakyoin's gravestone. Dirt and dried mud was splattered all around it, along with bits of debris. His gravestone had been tilted back as the earth around it was dislodged. The two stood there for a moment, staring. Joseph had dropped the flowers.
Jotaro!
His grandfather started.
Be on your guard, old man.
Jotaro took a defensive stance. He looked around, trying to find anything out of the ordinary. Anger coursed through him. Who could have done this? Why? Kakyoin was already dead. Why desecrate his burial site? He'd find whoever did this and make them pay. Then a thought occurred to him.
Old man, look into the bottom. Tell me what you see.
Right.
Joseph inched closer to the hole and peered down into it.
What the?
His voice was full of fear.
The coffin's empty!
What?
Jotaro came closer and looked down into the hole, while Joseph switched to lookout duty. At the bottom he saw the coffin's splintered edges, as if something had punched through it to reach the corpse. Inside, all he could see was dirt, wood, and bits of stone at the bottom. No sign of Kakyoin's body.
Who would do something like this?
Joseph's voice was a mixture of rage and confusion.
Why would anyone go after a dead body?
I don't know. But we need to find him.
Can you see anything with Star Platinum?
His stand had enhanced senses and precision. If there were any clues to be found, Star Platinum could find them. He switched to his stand's vision. Instantly, every detail of his surroundings became sharp and clear to him. He could see almost every grain of dirt in detail, the pattern of the breeze, every beam of sunlight, his grandfather's veins pulsing with blood, things normally invisible to the human eye. This strained his eyesight, though, and caused him some pain, so he couldn't look for very long. He peered into the hole with his enhanced vision. Nothing stood out to him upon his second inspection. He started looking around at the other graves in the woods beyond.
This is terrible,
Joseph was saying.
I thought we were finally safe. If some angry follower of Dio did this, then why wouldn't they just come after us? Why go after a corpse?
Jotaro ignored his grandfather as he surveyed his surroundings. Then he spotted something.
Old man, there's something in the trees.
What?
Joseph looked to where Jotaro had indicated, but without Star Platinum's superior vision, he couldn't see what Jotaro was talking about. But Jotaro could clearly see that there were some branches that had broken off a couple of the trees. A small detail for sure, but it could give them a lead.
There's some broken branches over there. Let's go check it out.
He started walking towards the trees, switching back to his regular vision.
Careful! It could be some kind of trap.
I'm aware.
Jotaro's voice edged on sarcasm.
Watch my back.
The two men started walking towards the woods, staying alert for any signs of danger, but nothing happened as they got closer. Once they reached the edge of the woods, Jotaro switched Star Platinum's vision back on and looked back up at the branches. They had definitely been broken unnaturally, snapped back as if something heavy had been thrown at them quickly.
Something was thrown at those branches. I'm going to look around and see if there's anything to find.
Jotaro studied the trees overhead some more, trying to see if there was any kind of trail left. Unfortunately, there were only a couple broken branches to study. He looked around the forest floor, looking for any more clues. Joseph was looking around as well, and both of them were trying to make as little noise as possible. After searching deeper into the woods, there was a distinct buzzing sound in the air. Joseph parted some undergrowth away from the tree with broken branches, searching for the source. He gasped loudly.
Jotaro! Come look!
Keep your voice down!
Jotaro snapped at him, but ran towards where his grandfather was standing. He looked down and gasped as well. Lying beneath a bush was the corpse of an old man. Flies buzzed around it and maggots wriggled. His body looked very wrong, though. Skin was clinging tightly to his bones, as if every drop of moisture in him had been evaporated. His throat and chin were brutally mangled, as if some animal had torn them open. 8 distinctive holes were punched along both sides of his throat on his veins. Jotaro looked away and swallowed his bile at such a horrific sight. His mind began racing to decipher what this meant. This man had been here long enough for flies to find him, and his wounds were very strange. Had he been attacked by a stand that had dried out his body? What was with the puncture wounds in his throat?
Jotaro, I recognize these wounds.
Where from?
His body's moisture is gone. And those puncture wounds on his neck. Only one creature could have made those. A vampire.
Jotaro felt a chill down his spine that had nothing to do with the winter air. Vampires. Disgusting, soulless creatures that survived by draining the life from human beings. Completely immortal, except when they were exposed to sunlight. Dio had been the last one.
That's impossible. Dio was supposed to be the last vampire on Earth.
I'm sure of it. That's the mark of a vampire. I've fought plenty of them to know.
Good grief. I thought we were finally done with all this mess.
I did too. But there's no denying it. There was a vampire here. He attacked this man and desecrated Kakyoin's grave.
Jotaro clenched his fist in anger when he remembered the grave. How dare he do that to Kakyoin? He'd make him pay.
Do you think he's connected to Dio?
I have no doubt. Dio was the last vampire. He must have created him somehow like his henchman at the mansion. The fact that he attacked the grave must mean he's not happy with what happened to his master. He could be out there looking for revenge on us as well.
If Dio created him, then he's most likely a stand user.
They stood for a moment, staring.
Ugh, great. Another stand user.
We have to find him before he hurts anyone else.
I agree. The problem is I don't have the faintest clue of where to look.
If he's after us, then he'll probably try to find us first. Though, I'm not a fan of the idea of sitting around waiting to be attacked.
Yeah. If he's going to come for us, the best thing we can do is lay a trap.
He looked back towards Kakyoin's grave.
Judging by the lack of police at the grave, we are the first ones to be here since he attacked. He can't be too far away.
Joseph started heading back towards the car.
What are you doing, old man?
Jotaro called after him.
We have to get away from here! I need to make some phone calls and cancel our flight back to America. We need to take care of this immediately.
What about the grave and the body?
Jotaro started to walk after him.
There's nothing to be done about the body. As for the grave, I'll pull some strings to get it repaired quickly, before the police or anyone else notices.
You're not gonna tell his parents?
What good would telling them do? What would we even say? Hello, this is Joseph Joestar. I'm calling to tell you that your son's grave has been desecrated. Also, his corpse was exhumed by a crazy vampire, and we don't know where it or the vampire is. Have a nice day! Ugh.
Joseph sighed as he wrapped up the imaginary conversation.
I guess you're right. His parents don't know anything about stands or vampires. It would just freak them out for no reason. Better to just let them believe he's still resting there.
Exactly.
They made it to the car and bundled in. Joseph lit the ignition and sped off in a hurry, eager to get to the nearest payphone. Jotaro only blankly stared out the window. He thought their journey was finally over and they could enjoy some peace. But once again, he was wrong. And there were still lingering threads of their 50-day adventure returning to haunt them.
Whoever this vampire is, I'll make him suffer the worst death possible. Let it be a message to anyone else who tries to come after this family.
Something else was bothering him too. The coffin. Something had seemed wrong about it.
The wood wasn't broken inward. It was forced outward.
His stomach clenched. Joseph hit a bump and parked. They had reached a payphone. It stood in a solitary box next to a bus stop bench.
Need me for this?
Jotaro asked, dismissing his disturbing thoughts.
No, I'll handle the talking.
Joseph got out, putting his hat on to shield his head from the cold. He gave a long sigh, his breath fogging.
Susie Q's not gonna be happy about this.
Kakyoin trudged along the highway in the dark. He'd been walking for a couple of days now, hiding during the daytime to avoid the sun. This was his only chance to move, so he knew he had to make the most of it. The last 2 days had been the worst of his entire life. Walking alone for hours, with nothing but his own thoughts for company. And boy, those got really annoying to listen to over and over with nothing to distract them or give them answers.
Is Jotaro even alive? Is this a waste of time? What will I do? If they're all dead, I wonder what Mom and Dad are doing right now. How did I even become a vampire in the first place? I'll never find him so thirsty. If I'm a vampire, does that mean I'm immortal now? What if I do find Jotaro, but I hurt him or Mr. Joestar by mistake?
Thoughts like those kept swirling around in his head, coming at a rapid pace. He wished he could just shut them up so he could focus on where he was going. Still, his thoughts were preferable to his thirst. It started again a few hours after he had started walking. He had passed by a major city, and even from miles away, the smell of it had hit him. Humans. Hundreds of them. All of them bursting with blood. It had taken all his self-control to force himself to turn away and keep walking. The smell enticed him from behind like a playful, taunting breeze.
I can't,
he kept telling himself.
I don't want to hurt anyone else.
His throat burned, like his mom's red-hot curling iron had been jammed down it, searing the tissues, demanding to be cooled by blood. He tried drinking from plants at first, like he had done to that tree back at his own grave. Any tree or large plant he saw, he stabbed his fingers into it and started to absorb the moisture. It helped a little bit. It was like being hungry and taking a large drink of water to trick one's stomach into thinking they were full. His throat stopped hurting for about an hour, and then would flare up again, demanding some real food. Then he tried animals. He saw another rabbit when he was making his way through a patch of woods. He used Hierophant to grab it and bring it to him. He sucked the life from it, and was surprised at how good it was. The burn in his throat lessened, but he still wanted human blood. The rabbit drained far too quickly, being so small. It was better than nothing, so he began using Hierophant to grab any animal he saw. Birds, rodents, foxes, deer. He stayed away from domestic animals like cows or dogs, knowing that killing them could attract unnecessary attention to himself once their owners found them dead. The animals had satiated his thirst, but it didn't completely get rid of his burning throat the way a human's had. The hot, sharp pain dulled to an annoying itch that lingered. No matter how much he coughed or drank animal blood, it wouldn't go away. Occasionally, he would step on litter, broken glass, or a sharp stone that would cut his bare feet, causing him to yell in pain. Of course, his regenerative powers would heal him almost immediately, but the fact that it kept happening made him wary of anything he might step on. His clothes were getting tattered and dirty. His white burial clothes had taken a beating, being exposed to rain, mud, and the harsh winds. They weren't meant to be worn for this kind of journey. They clung loosely to his frame. It all made him hate being alive, if he could even call himself that. The hollow feeling in his heart and mind seemed to never go away. Only the thought of finding out the truth from Jotaro kept pushing him forward through the dreary circumstances.
Jotaro. I have to find him.
He heard a clap of thunder. Then he felt a drip on his shoulder. He looked up. It started to rain again.
Great.
He looked around for any cover, but there was an empty field all around him, only a few bushes dotting the land here and there. He sighed, guessing he'd have to walk in the rain. Cars passed him every now and then as the freezing rain started to pour more furiously, their headlights illuminating the moving droplets. He was soon walking through puddles, his feet soaking. A new thought joined the fray.
Can vampires get pneumonia?
Just as he thought that, he heard car brakes screeching. He looked up to see a truck that had stopped on the side of the road. He kept walking, and when it was close, the driver window rolled down. It was a woman, seemingly on the young adult side. She looked a bit older than Kakyoin by only a few years. "Hey, are you alright?" she shouted to him over the rain and noise of traffic.
No. Not now.
Even in the rain, her scent drifted over to him, warm, pulsing with life. His throat burned sharply again.
I'm fine,
he said tersely. He kept walking, his eyes on the ground, trying to ignore her. "Can I give you a ride?" she called after him.
No.
He kept walking. He was tempted by the idea, and not just because he was thirsty. Getting in a car would help him be able to go much faster. But on the other hand, getting in an enclosed space with another person would be a very bad idea. He didn't know how long he could go without hurting her, not to mention what attention that could draw to him unnecessarily. Despite his cold attitude, she still kept talking to him, letting her car idle along after him. "You're still kilometers away from the city, you know," she said. "You'll catch your death out here. Please, let me give you a ride."
I don't care. I'll be just fine.
"Oh my goodness, are you barefoot?" She noticed his attire for seemingly the first time. "Why are you in that ghastly thing? Get in here now!"
I said no!
He turned towards her, his eyes flashing dangerously. She was starting to irritate him. He decided to try scaring her off.
Leave me alone!
He opened his mouth, lips curled in a snarl. He bared his fangs at her and started walking towards her menacingly. He lunged towards her car. The girl finally seemed to get the hint. Her eyes widened. She screamed. She rolled up her window and sped off. Kakyoin sighed in relief. Her scent still lingered and burned his throat as if his body was protesting passing up a free meal. He growled, trying to swallow the pain down. Suddenly there was a loud sound of car horns blaring. The girl's car had merged right into another one, and the two cars collided. The one she had crashed into skidded off the highway and rolled onto its side once it reached the grass, resulting in an ear-splitting crunch. The girl's car swung around and pulled off to the opposite side of the road. Kakyoin only stood and stared blankly, not from horror, but from the scent that was emanating from the car that had rolled over and crashed. The person in there was dead. If they weren't, they were very close to it, judging by how much blood they were losing. He could smell it even from where he was standing across the rain. His throat squeezed tighter and burned more than ever before. His vision blurred, the scent overwhelmed him. His feet were moving before he even realized it. Cars honking, lights flashed, but none of it mattered. He needed it. Now. Without thinking, he raced across the road, a car horn blaring as it swerved to avoid him. He barely noticed. He reached the destroyed car. With all the effort that it would have taken to rip sheets off the bed, he wrenched the crunched-in door off the car. Inside was the battered body of a middle-aged man. His chest was pierced in a dozen places with broken glass. His arm was twisted at an odd angle. Kakyoin lunged in, barely noticing the broken glass and warped metal. He stabbed his fingers into the man's body and began draining it. After being deprived of human blood for a couple of days now, the rush of euphoria he felt was like being given a drug he'd been addicted to and trying to quit. His senses were supercharged and soaring high. He felt like this was what he was living for. He felt a grin break out over his face. An empty, wicked thing. His throat finally stopped hurting. The only thing that snapped him out of it was the screaming of a woman. Kakyoin turned towards her. The man's corpse drained. The woman who had offered to give him a ride was out on the grass and was screaming at the sight of what he was doing. His joy faded away. He looked at his hand coated in red and the man's corpse he had just drained. His grin slowly melted.
Not again.
Police sirens began to wail in the distance.
Crap.
Kakyoin got away from the car. He couldn't be caught by the police now. Nothing could interrupt his quest. If he didn't find Jotaro, he'd never know what happened to Dio and the others. He started running, putting the sound of the screaming woman and the police behind him. He noticed he could run much faster as a vampire, the cars and rain becoming blurs to him as he ran at his top speed. Despite his pounding terror, he felt exhilarated as he ran. Only the fastest humans who trained for years could ever hope to run at this speed. yet he could achieve it easily, and do it much longer than any human could ever hope to. His feet pounded into the wet grass. He was able to reach the city after about 10 minutes of running. He slowed down and started navigating his way through the winding streets. The police sirens soon started wailing after him as they caught up. He didn't know who the police thought they were chasing, but he knew he absolutely could not get caught by them now. He began ducking into alleyways, looking for any kind of escape. The sirens wailed louder, getting closer. His heart pounded. He finally came to an alley lined with dumpsters and garbage bins. The main street wasn't too far behind. He glanced at the sky and was terrified to see the faintest trace of the darkness give way as the sun began to rise. He turned the corner, trying to find another place to hide, when the alleyway stopped. He'd reached a dead end. The cry of sirens came closer. Kakyoin began to panic. He could probably use Hierophant to make it to the top of the building, but he would be completely exposed up there, and it would make it even easier for the police to find him. He searched around frantically, looking for any escape, when his eyes landed on one of the dumpsters.
You've got to be kidding me.
The sirens came right up behind. He heard the sound of cars parking. He ran to the dumpster and carefully lifted the lid. It was empty, thankfully, but it still reeked with the scent of mold and garbage, which made him gag with his heightened sense of smell. He heard the sound of police getting out, shouting at each other to search the alleyways. Kakyoin drew in a long breath, climbed up onto the metal rim, and jumped into the dumpster, closing the lid behind him. Now enveloped in darkness with a revolting stench, Kakyoin crammed himself into the corner so he would be harder to see. He cringed as his hands and feet touched the disgusting, sticky floor, the residue of who knows what clinging to his flesh. The rotten air made his eyes sting, bringing tears to them. He started gasping for air, only to start gagging from the smell again. He forced himself to be quiet, though, as he heard the sound of feet pounding the pavement as the police started searching the alleyway. He held his breath again, waiting for them to pass by. He heard them searching, and then he heard them yell at each other. He strained his ears to listen, ready at any moment to flee. After what seemed like an eternity, he heard them leave. Their heavy boots receding down the alleyway toward the street. He sighed in relief. They should be safe now. He wanted to burst out of the dumpster and get away from the nauseating environment, but he stayed where he was, wary of them coming back if they heard too much noise. But then a thought occurred to him. The sun was rising. Going out there now would be dangerous.
As disgusting as it is, it might be better to wait until nightfall to move again.
He groaned, not happy with this at all. He pulled his knees to his chest and rested his chin on them, cursing himself for getting stuck in this situation.
Stupid. You're so stupid.
How could he have let himself lose control like that? That poor woman, she was only trying to help him. She tried to be kind, and he'd responded by baring his fangs at her and getting her in an accident. And that man, he was the second human he'd killed to feed on. He tried to tell himself it was better than the last, because he had already been dying, but the excuse sounded hollow to him.
That man wouldn't have died if you hadn't scared that woman. You're just as responsible for this death. You're a monster. Not even human. Something worse.
His eyes began tearing up again, and not just from the rancid air this time. He swallowed his cries down and turned his head, leaning it on the dumpster wall. As his adrenaline wore off, he closed his eyes, trying to fall asleep. Even though he knew there would be more nightmares, he was too exhausted to care. Anything was better than listening to his thoughts right now. The last thing he wondered before darkness overtook him was if there was anything in the world that could fix what was wrong with him.